All right, we're back for episode 6 of Seattle Sports Secrets. Once again,
Man,
I'm
it's like every
Eugenio.
time we try to record one of these things, something happens.
Yeah,
We
but this
literally
time it's some good news,
manifested.
man.
We
This
literally
time it is some
manifested the
good
MLB
news.
lockout ending, which is
Yeah,
rather hilarious because that ended the day we recorded it, like right
it
after.
ended like what was that? An hour after we got off.
An hour or two, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
pretty crazy.
ridiculous.
And now we got some actual Mariners news to talk about, which is exciting. So we'll get into all that. Um, so today I want to focus a bit more on the Mariners since it is kind of that season. Got plenty of good stuff to break down, some interesting stuff. So without further ado, the breaking news, the biggest news, the Seattle Mariners have acquired outfielder Jesse Winker and third baseman Eugenio Suarez from the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for right-hander Justin Dunn, left-handed pitching prospect Brandon Williamson, and outfielder Jake Fraley. So, Tristan, what is your reaction to this trade?
Jerry, you've done it again. Like, this man is the master of the fleece, I'm convinced. Either that or he's in tune with the Force doing some Jedi mind tricks on all the other GMs, because that is the only explanation I have as to how on earth he's fleecing everyone left, right, and center. Like, how on, like, you got two power bats for basically depth pieces. That's it. In all honesty, I mean, I'm definitely going to miss Jake the Rake. I love me some Jake the Rake, and I think he's going to do phenomenal in Cincy. But
We
if you
all
look at
we
this
all owe
team,
him a beer for saving that game in Detroit.
dude, that catch was freaking phenomenal. And the Goldsmith voice crack for that call was just
A
the cherry
plus.
on top.
Yep.
And yeah, so gonna miss Jake the Rake. Dunn, I think he can be good if he gets his walk issue fixed.
Agreed.
And Williamson, I like, but again, with the starting pitching, it's like we have Kirby, we have Brash, we have Hancock, and you didn't give up any of those guys. That's a win.
Exactly. And yeah, this is such a good deal too because I mean Suarez is a bounce back candidate
Oh,
and
absolutely.
and I'm not big on his defense, but then again Perry Hill did turn JP Crawford into a Gold Glover, so I mean, you never
Yeah,
know
if
what can
anyone
happen
can
there with
if
him.
anyone can shore up Suarez's defense the way it used to be, it's Perry Hill and Scott
Oh,
Service
absolutely. Yeah.
and them's coaching crew.
And but I mean, they got a legitimate outfielder that stabilizes this young core. I love that. That's such a great and it seems to be Depoto's MO at the moment because like we're all talking about Trevor Story or Chris Bryant, this and that and this and that. Jerry goes out and gets a guy that no one had been talking about, and it's will probably be just as impactful because I mean, you look at Passon pointed out on Twitter, like the American League West is very, very loaded with right-handed pitching, and Jesse Winker has absolutely torched. I mean, just lit up right-handed pitching over the past few seasons, and it's just a great and as far as the return going back to Cincinnati, Justin Dunn's health and his command issues, like you mentioned, I think I mean, we'll see with more playing time what he can do, but it is kind of a bummer. I think he had a little bit more potential than say a Justice Sheffield. I don't think Sheffield has a future with this team, but you know, Dunn will get his opportunity in Cincinnati, and I hope he does well. And same goes for Williamson and Fraley. But again, for the Mariners, wow, Jerry just keeps rolling with the trades. It seems like you can't beat this guy when it comes to trades.
Yeah. I mean, he's had what? One bad trade in his tenure here?
Well, a couple. No GM is perfect, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's been.
It's like one or two trades that he's whiffed on, which for a GM entering his
And I can list them
third
on
or
my
fourth,
hand.
yeah. If for a GM that's in his fourth year, I think
Sixth, entering
sixth.
sixth,
Yeah.
2016. Yeah.
Yeah. So for a GM entering his sixth year as a GM, that's pretty damn good.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
that is he's making a bid for best GM in history. Granted, with DM's history being the way it is, the bar is set in hell, but
In
but you
Mariners
get my
history,
point.
yeah. Mariners history. You want to clarify that. I agree
Well,
with you. I think he is the best GM this franchise has had to date. I mean, he's not perfect. He's not a perfect person. He's not a perfect GM by no means, but
I mean,
he
no
is the
GM
best.
is.
Exactly. Um, going back to Jesse Winker for a moment. I want to touch on the fact that because he's a left-handed power bat that Jerry said he wanted to acquire. I think he goes so super well with Luis Torrens
Yeah,
and
I was gonna say like
that
I saw the opinion on like, oh,
platoon.
he can only hit righties. Oh well, Luis Torrens can demolish lefties as a DH. So have those two alternate as DH and you're set.
Yeah, I
Boom,
think
cheat code
it's a little bit
activated.
more complicated than that
I mean,
because you want to
obviously,
get
yes.
yeah, because you want to get Winker out in left field and get some time out in left field.
Yeah,
But
give one of
it's
those
like
outfield
then
guys a day off, like Lewis and
yeah, exactly. But now you're still looking at like who's gonna play center. Do we really trust Kyle Lewis's knee to hold up in center? I mean, granted, like I was having a conversation the other day, like if your knee is bad enough to not play center, then you probably shouldn't be playing right now. But at the same time, Kyle Lewis is our best option at center field. Like, who's going to be playing center field for this team throughout 2022?
I think it'll probably be Lewis. And if he's not set to go for center for the first month or so, then it probably is Kelenic. I'd
I'd have to
probably go with
imagine,
Kelenic.
yeah.
And I'm honestly okay with that.
Yeah,
I'm
for the
okay
first
with that.
month, I think he's not terrible. Like he was very bad last year. Kelnick was very bad in center field last year. But I think he can learn it, and he can learn it enough to where like he can hold out until you can find a long-term, whether that's and you know another factor in this outfield discussion is Julio Rodriguez playing center, because yeah, I mean that's a really big body, but he's proven to be very athletic. He's proven that he pretty much can play center field. The only question now is whether J Rod can do it at in Seattle as opposed to Double A, and that's still a very big question, because I mean you're talking about a guy who's seen 45 games at Double A and none at Triple A yet, where it's more advanced. The pitchers are better. The pitchers have MLB experience. So those are some questions I have with Julio's status. I mean, there's obviously no doubt that he's going to make a big impact on the Mariners in 2022. I just think he should spend some time in Triple A first,
Agreed. And I think he starts
especially
there.
with the prospect of playing center field.
Yeah, and I honestly think he starts in AAA. As much as Mariner fans hate and groan at that prospect, I think it's best for him,
I'd agree. Yeah.
honestly.
Yep.
Because think of it this way. If you rush his development, then we get another Dustin Ackley situation. And we don't want that at all. So let's trust Jerry here. He knows what he's doing. And if he starts in double A, cool. If he starts in triple A, cool. Like, it doesn't matter. He's definitely starting in the minors, I think, at least for the first few months.
Yeah, I think we can rule out the Dustin Ackley thing because I think the Dustin Ackley comparison, and I say that in air quotes, is goes better hand in hand with Jared Kelnick because of his rough year last year. I think I think Julio is flat out better, like more prospect hype than Ackley ever was. And so
That's true.
he's this like one of a kind, like almost to a Griffey extent, like this franchise altering. He is the face of your organization and will be for the next decade. So I think he will definitely handle the major leagues for sure, no matter what,
Yeah, I
eventually.
think bare
But
minimum,
I think
even
he
if
should
it's
see
like
some
for
more
a couple games at
advanced
the end of the year, I think he
minor
gets called
leagues.
up.
Yeah. He will play a major role in the 2022 team, but I just wonder what that role is and how much center field time he's going to get.
Yeah, but you have a good problem when we're talking about stuff like that. When you're talking about your top prospect maybe not getting called up this year because you have so much depth at a position, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like, so if one of those guys, like say
You
Kyle
haven't
Lewis
had that in
re-injures his knee
years.
again, or but this is a good problem because if someone goes down like Kyle Lewis or Mitch Haniger's had some injury issues, or God help us, Kelnick goes down, then we can call up Julio and say, all right, you're up. Next man up mentality. And we also
Right.
have Trammell too, which, God, I feel so bad for Trammell, man. I feel so bad. He is I don't see a scenario where he's not traded, at least within the
I
next
agree.
couple
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. He's going to be, I mean, yeah, he could be. Yeah. I agree with you on Trammell. Like, I don't see a future with him just because of the outfield future of the Mariners. So, I mean, he will be a good valuable piece. I could see Oakland loving Taylor Trammell for a Frankie Montas or
I'd
Sean
love Sean
Manaea.
Manaea.
Yeah, yeah, for 1 year. But yeah, it's interesting. Let's see. Let's see here.
Mind if I say a hot take real quick?
Go ahead, by all means.
If we end up trading for Sean Manaea and the Astros end up losing Correa and not getting Story for whatever reason, I think the M's win the division this year.
Yeah, that's fair.
I it's like,
Even if they don't get, I mean, well, here's the thing with Correa and Story and the Astros, because Carlos Correa, whether he comes back or if Carlos Correa goes back to Houston, I think that would slightly tilt the favors towards the Mariners potentially landing Trevor Story. And that could happen as soon as today, as of St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, day before Mariners spring training games. If Carlos Correa goes back to Houston, I think that gives the Mariners a better chance to land Trevor Story than if Correa goes anywhere else. Because
yeah,
now the Astros have a shortstop hole and the Mariners have a third base hole for a guy who says he wants to play shortstop. He's going to immediately rule out the Mariners no matter what. And the Mariners are already competing. Even if Correa goes back to Houston, the Mariners are already competing with the Minnesota Twins, who now have a shortstop hole after trading Kiner Falefa and Gary Sanchez, or the Yankees
or
traded them,
Sonny Gray, which what
and
the
Sonny Gray.
hell?
Yeah, but so the Mariners are competing with the Twins and the Boston Red Sox for Story's services if Correa goes back. So I mean, you're already up there with two good spending clubs. So it'll be tough, but I mean, it is possible and it is probably plausible too, I'd say.
Yeah. Because I mean, and you look at the rest of the division, this puts us ahead of the Rangers easily. Like their pitching is absolute dumpster fire. Like I like there are mice that could pitch better than the Texas Rangers right now. Like they have nobody. Literally nobody.
They have
I don't even
one
know who their starters
mediocre.
are. That's how bad they are.
They have a 3 starter as their ace. Let's just say
Yeah,
that.
that's awful. And then I think this puts us above the Angels too because it's the same problem. You know, yeah, you have Otani and Castillo and Iglesias and maybe Thor if he
Maybe
decides to not
Castillo.
be made out of glass for a year. But outside of that,
Castillo is a rumor, by the way, so they don't have Castillo yet.
well, even if they do,
Yeah,
they for sure have Otani,
I get your
Thor,
point.
a Thor made of glass, and Iglesias in the bullpen. Outside of that, that's a yikes for me. And then the A's, well, they are burning, imitating the Seahawks and just lighting their
Yeah,
entire
their fire
organization on
sale has
fire.
begun. And honestly, like I think this division was always going to be a 2 horse race from the start, especially from 2021. Even without the Mariners projections, I think Seattle entering last year was still the better of the remaining teams not named Houston last year, and so it was always going to be a two team race coming into this year and possibly last year. So I think the better this team gets, the more the division opens up. Sorry, the better this team gets, the more the division opens up. It just wide opens the future of the Seattle Mariners to playoffs and the World Series.
And if you also consider the Astros only won the division by 5 games last year. Granted, it never really felt like the M's had a chance for the division title, but at the same time, you can make the argument the Astros got worse. They lost Kendall Graveman. I mean, yeah, they got Justin Verlander back, and yeah, they might get Correa back, but you lost one of your best closer.
And they don't
And that
even,
is
if I
that's
may,
not a good thing, especially for an already weak bullpen.
right, yeah, and so their pitching staff took a hit, and Verlander is in the same conversation as Noah Syndergaard in that, like, he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. He threw 1 inning in the past 2 years, so he's pretty much they're both of them are pretty much wild cards. And so if the Mariners can go add another good, like, top of the rotation arm like Frankie Montas, as I mentioned earlier, like now you're looking at potentially the best rotation in your division. And now you start thinking like, okay, let's add another bat here and we can track these guys down.
I think even nowadays you could probably do at least track them down at least a little bit, put pressure on them
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
because
sure. For
because
sure.
especially if Kelnick does what he did in September consistently, if JP Crawford does what he did in June consistently, if Ty France continues to evolve, if Haniger continues to still rake, Winker obviously, if Suarez can bounce back like we all expect him to, then you have a 1 through 8 with Kyle Lewis coming back, and God only knows if he plays to where he can. We've seen him, but if that happens, the weakest spot on this lineup is Tom Murphy at catcher. That's pretty okay in my book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you can go
the
out
Astros got
and
worse,
add at the
and the
deadline.
Mariners, regardless of whether they add or don't, they got significantly better with that Winker trade, with the signing of Robbie Ray,
Adam
with this
Frazier.
trade of Adam Frazier. Yeah. So I definitely think they can, that regardless of whether we add or not, I still think we can track Houston down and at bare minimum give them a run for their money.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know that I think right now the Mariners are the consensus number 2 team in the West. And that's pretty easy to say. I think as long as this team can kind of stay within striking distance in the first half of the season, then the front office can go out and Jerry Dipoto can go out and add at the deadline and really show their faith and their creativity and add to this team and really push for the division in the second half this year. Because
And we haven't
as
even
long as
talked
you're
about the
close,
starting fifth spot. I
yeah,
think with Dunn going, I think this opens the door like wide open for a guy like George Kirby or Matt Brash to make their MLB debut opening day.
I don't know about that. I don't know that they'll be on the opening day roster, but yeah, you're certainly right about that last spot and George Kirby playing a very significant role in the pitching staff in 2022 and beyond. Obviously, he's one of the core guys. I kind of think Matt Brash will pitch out of the bullpen, to be honest, and I think at least for 2022, like at least for this year, that could suit him very well because the way he has that funky like 3/4 arm angle, but I think long term he'll be fine at as a starter. But I think this year, kind of coming out of the bullpen, will give him that experience of major league hitters, and he'll kind of get his feet wet without going frying pan to fire, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. But again, I think this opens the door up for Kirby to start. I really do. And what is it? Worst case scenario, he gets MLB experience, gets shelled. Okay, we can send him back down to the minors so he can learn some more. I think that's I think that's your worst case scenario in this option.
Yeah, and I mean that's the same thing with Rodriguez too. Is like you don't know. You don't know with these guys. You don't know with these young guys what they're going to do that are first like we didn't know what was going to happen with Jared Kelenic until he goes over 40 and has to go back down. We didn't know what was going to happen with Logan Gilbert. And Gilbert still has a lot of things to figure out to stay to be good this year. He's got a lot of things ahead of him. But
But I think he showed a lot of promise last year. I really liked Gilbert last year.
yes, yeah, we saw flashes of a ceiling, which was awesome. And he's got a lot of work. There is a lot of things that needs to go right for this team, but also the floor is higher than it was in 2021, which is a very good thing for
Yeah.
a young team like this.
Yeah. And especially with what should be the AL manager of the year in Scott Service and one of the best GMs in baseball in Dipoto, this team is scary. And I don't think we've been able to say that since the 90s, since '01. Like this team can legitimately be a scary team to face. And especially with expanded postseason, they have it in front of them. They can end the drought this year, realistically.
Yep. And I think going back to being scary, I think obviously the goal for every team is sustained winning and sustained success. And obviously some teams do it better than others, Dodgers and Rays. But I think the biggest thing, I think this is a make or break year for the Mariners, not just on the major league team, but I think this is a make or break year if the Mariners want to be that sustained winner that Dipoto has talked about. I think this is a make or break year in the draft and amateur and adding to an already strong farm system. I think this is a big year for that, and I've got my eye on some prospects that I think will be a great be the way that they kind of start doing that, if that makes sense, because through this draft, I've got some targets that will set the Mariners up to be a long-term powerhouse by creating more waves of talent. like we've seen. So I think the biggest two guys for me this year in this year's draft class, and when Dipoto dealt Brandon Williamson, I think this could be a sign that he's leaning towards this pitcher that I'm about to mention, because by dealing Williamson to the Reds, I think he could be looking at IMG Academy in South Florida's Jackson Ferris. He's a left-handed pitcher. I think Dipoto could be looking at him and saying, all right, this is our guy that we need to take in the first round, because he's got fantastic stuff. 90 hot upper to mid 90s, mid to upper 90s fastball, good command of the breaking ball, 3 pitches, curveball, slider, changeup. Just all around solid pitcher. And I think Dipoto could be looking at him for the first round and saying, all right, this is why I'm okay moving Brandon Williamson, is because we think this guy will be available to us at pick number 21, and we will kind of replace Williamson and restock our farm system a little bit, because they didn't deal that much. But
yeah, they really
I think
didn't.
that's huge for the development and the maintained on-field success of the major league team.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, Jackson Ferris, I haven't done my research on MLB prospects. I've done more with the NFL draft since that's closer. It's about a month away.
Yeah,
But
that's understandable.
yeah, I mean, if we restock the farm system, forget about it. We could have the potential to be what the Seahawks weren't, and that is a dynasty. We have the potential to be an absolute dynasty if we do this right.
Yeah, I get finicky about the Seahawks thing, because I understand where you're coming from with the Seahawks. If we can just go a little bit surface level into this,
Oh, jeez.
because I know I said I want to focus
let's
on Mariners,
talk briefly about the dumpster fire that is this organization.
I just want to go on surface level a bit, because I know you have expressed, and a lot of Seahawks fans and Seattle fans alike have expressed this disdain for Pete and John Schneider right now. But really look at what they've done. Like step back, but from this Russ trade and all that, just step back and look at what they did. Like 10 consecutive years of making the playoffs. Yeah, you didn't get that second Super Bowl. Yeah, you didn't like you kind of tailed like the Cubs did, but after 2016, but 10 straight seasons of making the playoffs. Like that is so hard to do in any sport. Like that's respectable, and that's a legitimate sustained winner right there. That's what the Mariners want to be. So I think to just call the Seahawks a terrible franchise right now, just because they had one bad season, and trading Russell Wilson definitely doesn't help, but like making the playoffs 10 straight years and almost having 2 Super Bowls is pretty dang good.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that they were bad. I'm not saying that their cemented in legacy is horrible and one of the worst in the sport and in this franchise, because they're not. Let's be honest. They're not. In all honesty, Pete Carroll's one of the best coaches this franchise has ever seen outside of Mike Holmgren.
Exactly.
John Schneider is one of the best GMs this team has ever seen. That's honesty, because they brought us what nobody else has, and that is a Super Bowl. And I will always love them for that.
Yeah.
That being said, there comes a time when things have to end. And I don't think Pete and John realize that time is right now. And I think that is the problem. I think that is what's haunting this team. And I think that is what's going to come and bite us in the ass later.
Yeah. And when you step back and look at what the Seahawks have done, like I think a little bit there is a model for the Mariners there. Like there are things that that Jerry Dipoto and Scott Service can learn from those early years of John Schneider and Pete Carroll, like how they built their contending team and how they maintained it. Particularly how they maintained it, I think there's a lot that the Mariners can learn from that, and vice versa. There's a lot that the Seahawks can learn from the way that the Mariners took their bloated, not good enough, good but not good enough, high payroll 2018 team and turned it into a low payroll, high ceiling, very bright future team that stands before us today. So I think there's a good give and take there with the Seahawks and Mariners. And I think that will sort of help Seattle, help the Mariners become more like the Dodgers or the Rays, and Blue Jays are kind of my comparisons. Rays with a bigger budget. And this helped the Seahawks like actually take a step back and reassess and make a good plan and hopefully get back to another Super Bowl here within the next decade.
And that's the thing. I'd love for that to happen. I really would, but I have no faith that it will. Because from what Pete and John and Jody Allen have said, Jody Allen trusts Pete and John, which right out the gate, bad. Very, very bad. If you're trusting a 70-year-old Pete Carroll over a franchise quarterback, that's a problem. And if that is the case, I'm going to say it right now, Jody Allen has the potential to be the worst owner this team has had since since Ken Behring. And that if anyone out there remembers Ken Behring and how bad he was, he's the reason the 90s teams were bad. So yeah, we could be careening towards a repeat of that. So as much as I'd love to have optimism for this team, it's really hard to find any, especially with Carroll and Schneider still there, because again, I just don't have faith. I don't have faith in them anymore. I don't think they're the right guys moving forward.
It's like you said, all good things have to come to an end. So as the Seahawks run comes to an end, hopefully the Mariners will kind of rise up and take their place.
It's always been a give and take like that with the Hawks and Mariners. Because the 90s, yeah, the Seahawks sucked monkey dung, but the Mariners were one of the best teams in the league then. Because 95, the double.
That was kind of
that was one of the best eras in Mariner baseball. And then if you go to the 2000s, Mariners kind of tailed off, Seahawks kind of ramped up. 2010s, Mariners were god awful. I mean, except for like 2012 and some rare years like that. And the Seahawks won it all. Yeah. So they've always been joined like that.
Getting back to the M's here real quick. Oh, yeah. I have pulled up Fangraphs. I don't know if you ever been on Fangraphs? It's a good website.
I've dabbled in Fangraphs, yes.
Yeah, but they recently just released their postseason projections and who's gonna finish the where, and I've got it right here. They've projected the Mariners with a 9.3% chance to win the division. 17.
I'd say that's fair right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. To clinch the wild card, the Mariners sit at 17.8% and make the playoffs 27.2%. Again, obviously, these things are very typically low on the Mariners. They've got the Angels ahead of Seattle.
Yeah,
blatantly ridiculous. But I think 27 as the Seattle Mariners roster stands right now, 27% chance to make the playoffs. I feel like that's pretty good. Obviously, it'll be a little bit higher. Or no, I take that back. It'll be a good bit higher, like when you factor in down the stretch. But as it sits right now, I feel like 27% is not bad. Um,
I
definitely
mean, that's
not
more
behind
than
the
they've given
Angels
us most
though.
years.
Yeah, I agree. Better than most years, and definitely we're not going to be sitting behind the Angels.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that angers me about the Angels. Like, everyone always thinks they're like, this year's gonna be the one. They're like Cowboys fans. They always think
Yeah,
this year's gonna be the one where they
yeah.
finally get through and Trout
Just
makes
need
the
pitching.
playoffs and all this stuff. And it never happens. It never happens.
Artie Moreno was one of the owners that um, voted against the new CBA, and was one of the owners that voted against Steve Cohen buying the Mets. So that tells you everything you need to know about the Angels organization.
Yeah, and again, it's like, could the Angels be good? Yes. Do I see them being good? No, not with that pitching situation. I'm sorry,
Exactly.
but you're gonna need more than a rumored Luis Castillo and a Thor made out of glass to shatter that dumpster fire.
Yep.
It's it makes no sense. And it's the same thing with the Rangers too. Like, yeah, you added all of these great pieces like Seager and
Semien.
Semien and Garver and all these guys,
They can hit.
but
We'll give you
they can
that.
hit, but they can't pitch. And it's that double-sided coin. You need to have
Oh,
both.
and
You
I
can't
think
just
the
have one or the
Mariners
other. And I
are,
think that's what Jerry's done really well with the
yeah, I
ends.
think the Mariners are almost to the point where they've got that perfect combination, because this is, even if you look at the Mariners pitching staff, obviously the rotation is in need, like they need some help with the rotation. But you kind of go down the list here of the bullpen guys. See, Paul Sewald, fantastic personality. I love me some Paul
Dude,
Sewald,
God Seawald, baby.
but
Give me more God Seawald.
him and Drew Steckenrider, I think, are going to step back this year, just because they were 1 year breakouts, and relievers are so volatile. I think that they're due for some regression. Casey Sadler, on the other hand, his his stuff is so good that I think he's maintainable. Diego Castillo, I think there's some interesting, the stats and the eye test on Diego Castillo, that is interesting. Like, you watch him this year and you would think he's terrible, but the underlying statistics say he's actually a very pretty effective reliever. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with him this year. Ken Giles is coming back from
That's
Tommy
huge.
John. He throws 100 with a wipeout slider, so that's potentially a breakout in the making. Andres Munoz throws 100 with a wipeout slider.
Munoz is the one I'm excited for.
Yeah, we saw him in the final game of the season against the Angels. He had a good he got a couple of outs, I think, but we got to see some of that. And then, yeah, like some of the long relievers, like this is legitimately a top 5, top 3 bullpen in the American League as a whole. And so now you
I mean,
throw
you
in
could argue
another,
top 10, top 5 in the entire MLB. You could
yeah,
make that argument.
yeah, yeah. And so now you throw in a top of the rotation arm via trade, and you're looking at a very deep and well constructed pitching staff. And if they just add a sprinkle more offense, like another, like a better center fielder, say, or a big infield bat, now you're looking at a pretty flippin' complete team. Like like now you're looking at a legitimate roster that can compete with the Houston Astros.
I mean, not even just the Houston Astros. I mean, we always talk about them as the competing, but any team in the AL,
Yeah, yeah,
honestly,
you're right.
because even if they don't do any of that, even if they don't add at all, even if this team, what we're seeing is what heads into opening day,
which it
I'm
most
still
likely
pretty
is.
confident in our playoff chances because, I mean, that AL East is going to be very tough. I'm not going to lie. But I think we can beat the Red Sox. I think we can beat the Yankees. Blue Jays and Rays,
No, nope.
little tougher. I think the Rays series, the two Rays series last year were anomalies. I don't think
Yep,
anyone saw
I
us
would
going
agree with
six
that.
and one against the Rays last year.
Yeah,
But I mean, Baltimore's going to be a pushover. That entire AL Central's going to be just right picking. Like
yeah.
Detroit could be good, yes. Chicago will probably be a problem, yes. But Cleveland, not
Minnesota,
really.
what are they doing?
I mean, they're possibly trading away Jose
Weird.
Ramirez. I don't see them. I don't see them being a threat. I don't see Minnesota
I
being a
don't think.
threat.
Well, I don't think they'll trade like we talked about actually in the last one. I don't think Cleveland will trade Jose Ramirez, but yeah, you're right. They're not quite there in terms of competing in the Central.
And they're definitely not on the level of the Mariners right now.
Yeah.
So same thing with the Twins either. Like, yeah, they got Sonny Gray, big
Who I
whoop.
who I wanted for the Mar I wanted Jerry to go get, but that's a bummer.
Yeah. But again, oh well, like they traded away Josh Donaldson, one of their better hitters. So
Yeah,
I
I,
don't
the Twins confuse me, man. I don't know what they're doing.
they're on the same boat as the Rockies. No one knows what on earth those two teams are doing.
Yeah,
Freaking Chris, let's talk about the
yeah, yeah,
Rockies
yeah,
real
yeah,
quick.
yeah. Because
Chris
Chris
Bryant for
Bryant,
7 years? Like,
this was a
what
guy
on
that
earth is Dick Monfort
I'm
on?
not gonna lie. I was kind of on the Mariners Chris Bryant train too, and then of course you see someone's stupid enough to come give a 37-year-old or a 30-year-old, not 37. Someone's stupid enough to give a 30-year-old 7 years for $180 million. And you're like, okay, I'm glad the Mariners didn't do that.
Right? I'm like, all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense why Jerry didn't do that because
Yeah.
I mean, Dick
I mean,
Monfort apparently decided, oh, I want a name to bring people into the stadium and decided, oh, there's Chris Bryant. Let's just give him all of the money instead of a guy everyone already loves in Trevor Story.
and
That makes total sense.
yeah, they
I'm
couldn't
sorry,
pay.
Rocky
They could
fans. I
you
really
can
am.
pay Chris Bryant, but you can't pay Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story. What are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, I'm sorry, Rockies fans. It's rough
Yeah,
right
it
now.
is rough.
But
Um,
back on topic, I don't see the Twins and I mean the Reds are oh, they're NL. But Kansas City, I see like yeah, they got Bobby Witt Jr. coming up, but I don't see them as a threat. I don't
yeah,
see
they're not
Minnesota
ready
as a
yet.
threat. I don't see Cleveland as a threat. I mean, I definitely don't see Baltimore as a threat.
Yeah, no one does. And to go back to Chris Bryant for a second, because I think this does impact Trevor's story and what because now that Chris Bryant, a 30-year-old, got 7 years from the Rockies, Story is going to want a very similar contract, and he's going to want, like, unless for some reason he changes his mind and like goes with a short deal, he's going to want a long-term deal, and he's going to want to play shortstop, or his market just dwindles, like we've texted, like I was telling you about this before we got on here. Like, if Correa goes back to the Astros and Boston finds someone else, or like basically, if it comes down to, if Correa goes back to Houston and it comes down to Seattle, Boston, and Minnesota for Trevor Story, I could see Jerry being fairly aggressive with that. I mean, or I certainly would hope that Jerry is very aggressive. But it would be interesting because I think he would be looking for a similar deal as Chris Bryant. And I mean, you get past like 5 or 6 years for Trevor Story, and it's like, I don't know, man. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't,
God,
I think,
how much would you laugh if the Astros gave Correa $60 million a year?
well, it depends. That would probably be for a 1 year deal.
I mean, yeah, more than likely. But even if it was like a multi-year $60 million per year deal,
That would only be like 2 or 3 years at most. The AAV would be, and we'd never see anything like that. But yeah, I think for the Mariners, I I want them to get Trevor Story, but at the same time, like I was having a conversation last night, I think it would also make sense because you look at next year's free agent class, and it's like, okay, well, if we can't get Brian or Story, who would be available next year? Xander Bogaerts, anyone?
Ooh. God, could
Xander
you
Bogaerts
imagine
is
Xander
probably
Bogaerts on this
just
lineup?
as good, if not better, than Trevor Story. So maybe you just wait. Maybe if you're the Mariners, you're saying, okay, that's our guy. Let's pass on these guys, take the money that we've saved up from Robinson Cano, and we still are running out. This team is still running out $100 million payroll, right around 100 with all the additions. They can still very much afford to throw $30 million a year at Xander Bogaerts. So I think it would also make sense for the Mariners to just kind of sit this last one out and go get Bogaerts go get Bogaerts away from Boston next year.
God, that would make us scary. That would make us
Yeah, and
legit.
that would take
That
the
would push
Mariners
us over the
from
edge.
division
That move
contenders.
alone.
Yeah, and that would take the Mariners from division contenders to World Series contenders and possibly even, dare I say, World Series favorites.
Yeah. I mean, even if that's the only thing they add, that automatically puts them right up in that conversation
Yeah,
for
that and
contenders.
yeah, because Bogarts is one of those players that I mean, you're here, Bogarts puts you here.
I mean,
So
Boston's gonna try and do
yeah,
everything they
Boston will
can to
be
bring
will
him back.
definitely be in the mix, and he'll probably want to go back. But man, if you can get him away from the Red
If you can,
Sox, like
dude, if you could pry
that's a
him away
game
from
changer.
Boston, that would be wild.
Especially if the Mariners are planning for this and they're like, all right, we can offer this guy, we can go all out and offer this guy, X amount, X million for what, 7 years, like that would be an enticing offer because Seattle is becoming, I think is becoming a destination location for free agents. Like you look at what the team is doing, you look at the fan base, you look at the city, like what's there not to like about Seattle if you're a free agent? Like you want to
Yeah,
go win. You're a free agent that wants to win a World Series. I think over the next coming years, Seattle is the place to be.
yeah, and that's the benefit of having, like you see this all the time with teams like the Chiefs and the Bills and the Buccaneers and the Packers in the NFL, and you see it with all those high-end teams. All the free agents know they want to sign there for even if it's going to be cheaper because they know they'll have a chance for bigger glories. And I think Seattle, the M's, are finally becoming one of those teams.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we certainly saw it with Robbie Ray, and and hopefully there will be more to follow.
By the way, I will thank you, Toronto, for giving us Robbie Ray. We will gladly give you Yusei Kikuchi as tribute. Just
Oh
saying.
yeah, I thought that was so funny because
3 years, 36 million.
that's a payment. Like the Blue Jays are deep. The Blue Jays got deep pockets and they are just scary. So it'll be
Yeah,
I
especially after
cannot
they
wait
traded for Matt Chapman. Oh man.
yeah, I cannot wait for a Blue Jays Mariners postseason series. That is going to be so good for both.
That will be wild. So
All
before we
right.
end this, since we've been at this for an hour talking nothing but Mariners pretty
Yeah.
much, let's talk about the Kraken and your boy Calle Jarnkrok getting traded to
Oh yeah,
Calgary.
that is right. Yes, a little bit of news there. So pretty
I
much
like
it
the
was
trade.
just
I think that was a good return for a guy who probably wasn't going to do much for this team.
yeah. So Calle Jarnkrok was traded to the Calgary Flames for was it 4 draft picks? I believe it was.
I
I
believe
know it
you
was
said it
a
was
second
us.
Florida's second rounder from last year or from this year. Florida's second rounder, then a third rounder in 2023,
And then a 7th and 24.
seventh and 24. Yeah. I think that's a pretty solid haul.
That's a pretty solid return.
Yeah. Especially for a team that honestly the Kraken need draft picks like right
They
now.
really do.
They just need like as many draft picks as they can get because we've talked about this before, like building up that young talent base, especially when you've already chosen the long build and build for the future. Like get draft picks, man, and this is a pretty good trade for that. So yes, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what they do with it. I'll be curious who they take, but I mean, right now they're certainly still in the conversation for
Give
Shane
us
Wright.
Shane Wright, baby.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. But yeah, so I think with that we should kind of wrap up. Once again, you have been listening to This is Seattle Sports Secrets. I'm Ryan Hanna,
I'm Tristan Pratt.
and I think that will do it. So we'll catch you later.
Catch you whenever we do this next. Who knows? It
Yeah,
might be
hopefully
next
soon.
week because something else breaking might happen.
Yeah, hopefully soon. All right. Go
Take care,
Mariners,
y'all.
go Seahawks, go Kraken. Later, man.